Hello, my name is Gil Penalosa, and this is Cities for Everyone, the webinar where every other Tuesday I invite fascinating people to share their stories so that all of us can become better, passionate advocates. Advocates on what? On creating cities that are more equitable, sustainable, and fun. Originally, I'm from Bogota, Colombia, and I've been living in Toronto, Canada for the last 26 years. 20 years ago, I created 880 Cities, a nonprofit based in Canada, and I've been fortunate to have worked in over 350 cities around the world and making many friends, and many of them are the ones that I invite as guests. Some of the best urbanists who have done things. Today, we have a wonderful program. We have the title is Streets Reimagined for People and Planet. And we have two guests that they work as a team. Skye Duncan, who's the executive director, and Fabrizio Prati, who is the director of design. And they're going to tell us about the streets, how to design streets for people and the planet. Welcome, Skye and Fabrizio. Welcome.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation, Gil. It's great to be here, and also thank everyone who has joined today and those who will watch the recording of this webinar. Yeah, it's great to see all of these people from all over the world. So very briefly, just introducing myself, my name is Fabrizio Prati. I'm the Director of Design and Research at GDCI, which is the Global Designing Cities Initiative. So I'm basically the technical lead for the organization. And as you probably guessed it, I'm Italian, though I live in New York City at the moment, and I'm an urban designer. I've been with the organization for a little over 10 years, and I've been in the city, in the field of city planning and urban design for close to 20. Our executive director, Skye Duncan, is based in New Zealand.
Hi there. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to whatever time zone you may be calling in from. I am thrilled to be here today speaking to all of you, and a huge thank present GDCI and share a little bit more about what we do. So my name is Skye Duncan. I'm the Executive Director of GDCI, or the Global Designing Cities Initiative. And I'm here today with my colleague, Fabrizio Prati, who will be following up after my presentation. I'm going to give a bit of an overview of GDCI, what we do, who we are, what drives us, and then Fab is going to pick up from there. Awesome. So obviously, I think we're preaching to the converted often in these types of conversations and webinars with this audience. But, just stepping back and reminding ourselves when we look at the big picture, we know that over half of our population across the planet lives in cities today, and this is only increasing. We're projected to have, 70% and even more in the coming decades living in urban environments. And while, of course, when we look across the planet, our culture, our languages, our contexts and realities on a daily basis are vastly different. We may look a little different, our skin color, our accents, but ultimately we're kind of mostly around the same size. We've got the same human senses generally. We move roughly about the same speed. So, regardless of whether we're thinking about Milan or Melbourne, or talking about Addis Ababa to Auckland, Barcelona to Bogota, it's really critical that we remind ourselves that cities are places for people. And this means, how do we keep humans at the center of what we're designing and thinking about, rather than kind of having them squeeze into some leftover space after, pretty designs or fancy design thinking is done. And so at GDCI, we are rather obsessed, or let's say passionate, about streets. And the reason we're quite passionate about streets is because these are our largest network of continuous public space we have in our cities, and therefore one of our biggest untapped assets we have as city shapers, city decision makers, to address a lot of the crises that we are facing. And when we think about our streets, of course, we often think about movement, but we forget, these can be a place to learn to ride a bicycle, to balance or bounce, to dine and dance, perhaps. For some folks, it's a performance, a place to perform or celebrate. For many, it's the place that they make their money. Others, it's the place that they go and spend it. And really, our streets are this kind of opportunity to spend time with old friends or meet new ones, to enjoy a bit of nature in an increasingly dense urban environments, to relax, to stretch, and essentially they're the front doors to our homes and businesses. And yet, in pretty much every corner of the planet, these are the types of scenes that we're seeing, where all of that kind of real estate has been given over to private automobiles, to the point that it's like consuming our budgets, it's chewing up our time and damaging our environment. Of course, we know it's heating our planet, and we've essentially forgotten about humans, right? We've forgotten about this fact that cities are places for people, to the point that people are now risking their lives on a daily basis when they step outside trying to get to work, to get to school. And our most vulnerable folks are really having to battle off against, big metal boxes when they don't even have an accessible sidewalk or footpath. It's quite devastating when we think about the fact that we're killing people slowly, right? Now, 99% of our population is breathing polluted air on a daily basis. We're killing folks slowly because we've designed physical activity out of our daily lives. Our streets are no longer seen as safe enough spaces for kids to walk and cycle to school, leading to, over 80% of our young folks around the globe not getting daily recommended need hours and minutes of physical activity, leading to lifelong chronic diseases and huge economic burdens on society. And we're killing people quickly. It's we've got, over 1 million people are dying on our streets every day. Every year around the world. And what's devastating is that it's the number one killer of ages 5 to 29, people in the prime of their lives. So completely preventable deaths that are happening on our streets on a daily basis. And so these are all really driving factors for us at GDCI, where we try and take these global agendas and translate those into local action. We work to inspire leaders, to have technical information, to be able to inform practitioners, but also accessible enough to invite and empower communities to kind of demand more of their local street spaces. We're over 40 folks scattered across more than 15 countries across the world. We were founded by Jeanette Sadik Khan just over 10 years ago now, and we've worked in over 70 cities across the planet. And our foundational document, which some of you may have seen, is called the Global Street Design Guide. It's a free download in tons of languages, so check it out. And this has now been endorsed and supported by over 130 cities, regions, and organizations, which is really exciting and acts as this kind of permission slip to do things differently, to challenge the status quo, and to really kind of look at how we can update these practices. So if your city is not on here, feel free to reach out and we can have a chat. As I mentioned, we've got it in a lot of different languages to try and increase accessibility. And we've been really thrilled over the years to be able to expand that family. Designing Streets for Kids guide, now available in 10 languages. We just added Arabic actually last month. And, this is, I think, just such really, really important work that takes this lens of, when we think about kids and how do we offer not only improved and independent mobility, but also thinking about our streets as places to pause and sit and play. And particularly when you get into the early childhood education and brain development science, knowing these first years, the first 1 year and 5 years, are just so critical in building healthy brains. And the kind of core principles that we know ultimately lead to healthy kids and healthy adults come often from these very early years. So, opportunities to reduce stress, to strengthen core life skills and support responsive relationships. And, to challenge ourselves to think about the role of streets and public spaces in supporting that healthy brain development is really important as well. And we've got lots more information on that, maybe another entire webinar. And then our latest guide that we just released a couple of months ago is Designing for Safe Speed. So also encourage you to take a look at that and check it out. So we've got a ton of suites of kind of different resources. And all of these really use this premise of how do we take the outdated hierarchical pyramid where the car has been king and we've forgotten about humans and flip that on its head to put people first, to prioritize, sustainable transport options, then think about city services, and freight and movement of goods. And when we have the space, think about the private automobiles. And of course, the bulk of our city streets are already built, right? So we need to be thinking about, yes, we get the new stuff right, but if we don't also ask what's possible of the space that we already have, then we're really not going to be able to address the core issues we're hoping to, kind of looking at the street through a new lens and asking how can we design for more functions to manage our water, clean our air, improve our biodiversity, etc. And at the same time support more people, all of the different users who need to use that space on a daily basis. So how do we kind of shift from, just dealing with like basic survival to thinking about thriving? So surviving to thriving, and, making sure we've got those fundamentals of safety and accessibility, but also then thinking about health and comfort, inspiration and education, and of course, crazy things like love and joy. So we know that our built environment obviously shapes us as human beings, but we also have this opportunity to, shape built environment itself through thinking about policies and projects and processes and so forth. So, regardless of our entry point, whether it's considering different users, whether it's different transport modes, public health, climate, efficiency, equity, we feel like there's, strongly base our work around some core pillars to support this transition that we believe is needed. One of those is around policy and design guidance. So how do we help ensure that all the evidence and science out there is translated, from academia, from guidebooks into local policies and updating budgets and influencing projects? And so, ultimately, how do we support cities in thinking about how do we stop prioritizing and subsidizing individual motorized vehicles and make sustainable transport options safer, convenient, affordable, and comfortable? Essentially, it's very politically unpopular, but essentially making it easier not to drive. And it seems crazy that it's so difficult politically because all the science and evidence tells us this, right? We know that sustainable transport options are more efficient. If we look at how many people we can, or the kind of capacity of 3 meters of space, we see like a typical travel lane, say 9 feet, although most of you, I think, well, Canadian metric and imperial. Either way, doesn't matter. The fact is that sustainable modes are way more efficient than private space for private automobiles. And, another way to think that is the space required or consumed by moving 50 people by foot, by bike, by bus, by car, by autonomous vehicle, by Uber. The reality is, as our cities grow, we have to make decisions. Do we want to continue moving people like this, or kind of rather in a more multimodal approach? And knowing, just when we draw those lines on the page in a slightly different place, we can not only move 2.5 times as many people, but then start to get more benefits like the public space and the greening and so forth. So sadly, we've been stuck in this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy where, we've had congested streets. We've been told that more lanes, wider lanes is going to solve that problem. It does for a hot minute, maybe a few months, but then ultimately we end up with more cars, more congestion. And so the cycle continues, all the while making our streets, more dangerous, harder to cross and so on. There's a great quote by Lewis Mumford, adding highway lanes to deal with traffic congestion is like loosening your belt to cure obesity. It provides a moment of relief, but it doesn't address the kind of root cause that we're talking about here. So we know we really need to shift to a different problem from moving cars to moving people. And so this kind of updating of policies, where we take the GSDG and work with cities to translate that, adapt it into local contexts, whether it's, new street design manuals in Recife in Brazil, the new National Urban Street Design Guidance in Aotearoa in New Zealand, to, guidance in Sweden at a national level, to Mexico City and so on. So this is a big part of the work that we do to support cities. We also believe that it's really important to take the time to train a broad group of stakeholders who are involved in shaping streets. If we're kind of rewriting the rule book, it's important that we then kind of help support practitioners in knowing how to do that differently. So tons of workshops, yes, the typical in a classroom, presentation, interactive workshops. We try and make them fun. We've got a lot of kind of puzzle pieces, and yes, we make people wear party hats and play different stakeholder roles. We've got a great reverse periscope that we designed. It's a free download on our website, again, to help folks see the street from the height of a 3-year-old, 95 centimeters, the average height of a 3-year-old, getting them out from behind their computers and experiencing the street, different accessibility challenges, games, boards, but not just engineers, designers, but also like our journalists, the folks who are helping us tell the story more broadly to the community and get buy-in and help people who are scared of change to face that. And also working with the enforcement community, the folks who this is their daily kind of office, so to speak, to support the movements and make sure they understand or have the opportunity to realize that they're supporting the movement and safety of all people, not just people in private cars. And we feel really privileged. We've reached almost 50,000 people at the moment through our various presentations and trainings and workshops. And then one of my favorites is actually, getting this stuff on the ground, showing people what's possible. This is an example in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, where we started with a pop-up for an afternoon, got the commissioner out, showed what's possible, can see the turning radii, this idea to really get over that first hump, then allowed kind of that permission slip to go back and do it for 6 months to collect qualitative and quantitative data, to then make that a capital project and scale it up to a citywide program. Or in Bogota, similar strategies, taking an intersection, transforming it over a matter of a weekend, collecting the data and turning that into capital construction in the longer term. But, you just see these kind of before and after scenes and showing people want these types of transformations to be permanent, and unsafe scenes like this, families trying to cross the street or suddenly being able to have protection of cyclists can see a drastic reduction in conflicts between users. Istanbul in Turkey, transforming spaces like this, working with the local consultants, Superpool, and the local municipality, again working towards capital construction in the long term, but this kind of reducing fear of change with some of the shorter term changes, and then helping them scale that, and seeing now municipalities all over the region kind of picking up and having a bit of a competition of who can do it best. It obviously doesn't always mean doing paint first, sometimes going straight from scenes like this to capital construction, like in Recife in Brazil, the heart of multiple schools and daycares, really working to transform that space to improve, the water, the drainage, the mobility, but also putting kids' play and experience at the heart of what that transformation could be. We had over 300 kids engaged in the process in this project, and we're able to kind of claim back a really decent amount of public space, and be able to kind of demonstrate, more kids out playing in that space in the long run. And in Milan, this kind of scene outside a school where you can see, the parents are waiting to pick up their kids in the roadbed, with cars going past and parking and speeding and all of the rest of it. And so, these types of transformations, again, working with the kids. The school had a competition to name the plaza. This little girl's called it the Plaza of Dreams, which is just amazing. But these types of scenes afterwards, sharing a little bit about the stories they learned that day, or a secret between friends or siblings. And I love this photo because you can see this woman standing there with a newborn baby, like at the most vulnerable moment of life. In a space that a few days earlier was just, again, filled with speeding vehicles. And yet, here's the community coming together to meet that child, to kind of share stories, and they feel safe enough to do that, which I think is just, really incredible. And then starting to work with the city to also track the, pollution levels and be able to demonstrate, with less traffic, less pollution impacting young folks' lungs. And really the city of Milan and the team there has just done a phenomenal job in scaling that up now to the point that over 50% of the population lives within 15 minutes of one of these plazas. And to close up with Fortaleza, an example, this was meant to be a 15-day project, where it was one of the first projects we worked in the city with them to kind of transform the space. Pretty straightforward stuff, safe crossings, reclaiming, putting some markings. The kids were so desperate to play. You can see the paint is still wet and they're out there playing. But, suddenly then, families can sit in the shade, and a father can teach the kind of neighborhood kids to ride a bicycle. And, we do a lot of engagement so people can start to say and share what they prefer. In this case, the 15-day project, actually, this local business person, she actually created a petition to go to the mayor to say, look, we want this to become permanent. And so the city did. They made it a citywide program that allowed them to go to other sites. This is a great project. We worked with them around one of the arts districts in the city, seeing scenes like this be transformed, as a before and after. And simple strategies, shorter crossings, tighter turning radii, reclaiming space, being able to show that we can get safer speeds, we can get more people walking, we can get more people sitting and spending time. And then again, that scaling, let's do this in the kind of neighborhood main street. And then be able to show people are walking more safely. There's more kids and young people out in the space frequenting the businesses. And then they were able to kind of formalize that into a school program, engaging the kids themselves to understand where it's dangerous, what kind of designs they want. And, again, these types of transformations that are able to show what's possible. And of course, it's really lovely to see all the smiling faces and the bright color and see these types of changes. that can show it's safer, can show that it's more fun for playing, and that people are able to connect. Parents can connect more easily with each other, building social cohesion. But at the end of the day, the city is saving lives as well. And so, they're one of the few cities in the world that was able to meet the UN Sustainable Development Goal of halving fatalities by the year 2020. It's now shifted to 2030, but at the time they were one of the few cities in the world to reach that goal. So, of course, we tend to put up cities like Copenhagen and Amsterdam up on these pedestals. But as we all know, Copenhagen and Amsterdam didn't used to look like they do today, right? Copenhagen didn't look like that. And today it looks like this. Amsterdam, previously, their streets were also filled with cars. Today are very different. And so, these types of transformations don't happen by accident. People like you guys have made decisions to do things differently, to set different priorities, and to prioritize public transport and sustainable transport and prioritize people in their daily decisions. So we know the crises that lie ahead. We know what's possible. We've got all the evidence and we can learn from past mistakes. And I think, sometimes it's really important to just pause and ask ourselves, what if we cared more about our kids than our cars? And so I invite you to consider what you could do in your daily work to shape better places and spaces for the next generation, whether it's discussing it or changing it or funding it, implementing it, researching it, just doing it. I encourage you to dream big and be bold and act bravely and be the kind of annoying person in the room who is putting up their hand to challenge the status quo. And hopefully we see more of your cities up here on this pedestal as well. So I will stop there. I'll hand over to my colleague Fabrizio and just, share that I hope that the resources that we've been creating with, amazing networks of folks around the world can help you guys to reimagine and redesign safer, healthier, more sustainable streets in your cities. So thanks so much for your time, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
Amazing. Thanks, Skye. So to build on Skye's presentation, I'd like to shift us a little bit more on the how, looking at what actually it takes to transform streets, and a little bit of a reminder that streets can actually change.
And everyone, please keep in mind, I know that Skye speaks very fast. No worries. 2 days from today, you go to gpenalosa.ca and you will have the recording, both of Skye and Fabrizio. Not the Q&A that goes afterwards, but the full presentations will be available for free, so you can watch and take screenshots and send to elected officials, to city staff, to advocates. Fabrizio, now tell us about, by the way, Fabrizio is the director of design. So the two of them are the ones that are leading this transformation. Go ahead, Fabrizio.
Awesome. Thanks, Kayla. And I'll try to go a little bit slower. Let me know if I'm going too fast. But so yeah, building on Skye's presentation, I wanted to dig a little bit more deeper on the how. Looking a bit on what it takes to make these changes on the ground based on our experience as an organization, and also a reminder that streets can change. So in the global street design guide, we define 6 street design strategies. And actually, my favorite is this one, is the idea of acting now and starting somewhere. So this is something we have been trying to do with the cities we had the chance to work with, is to really help them find opportunities to quickly transform streets using temporary and interim solution. So when we look at how we can transform streets, the most common way is this one on the right. And as important and needed as it is, it comes with some challenges, right? Transformations can take years, cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, and they're rigid. They can be easily rectified after they are implemented. So that's why a way to start, a way to act now, is to focus on other types of street transformations, such as pop-ups and interim transformations. So to simplify, when we talk about pop-ups or pilots, those are transformations that last days. While when we talk about interim transformation, those are transformations that can last months or even years sometimes. And all of those are with the objective to then permanently transform streets using capital construction processes. The possibilities are almost endless. We can do a lot of things. We can do pedestrian facilities, we can do bike facilities, transit, we can do traffic calming, we can redesign intersection, we can implement plazas and public spaces. And that's something that we've tried to do in a publication. We tried to summarize those learnings of working with those cities in this publication here, which is called How to Implement Street Transformation. So what we did here is to kind of define the process to successfully get projects implemented using a relatively simple recipe. And like most successful recipes, the ingredients are very simple. The basics starts with the materials that cities, in most cases, already have in their supplies, like paint, planter, bollards. And when you put them all together at the right time and in the right order, they can add up to amazing transformation. So we start with the basics like chalk and paint and buckets and rope, water, tape, and these allows for quick implementations like pop-ups and pilot projects, and which are some of the fastest and easiest transformation that you can make. And then you can use things like planters or other barriers to physically separate and define the space. And once you have the space, you can give people a good reason to stay with something as simple as chairs and tables, benches, and then something maybe to protect them from the elements like umbrellas and having vendors and things that can create a space where people want to be. But ultimately, the most important ingredient is people, not just the people who enjoy the space, but also those who help create it and those who maintain it by taking ownership. And the list of materials goes on. The limit to that sometimes is not budget, but more imagination. And then, of course, you need to activate the space, making sure people are having fun and are enjoying the space together. But why do we use pop-up and interim street transformations with the cities we're working with? Well, one of the main reasons is because it's faster. It can take days, weeks, or even months instead of years to transform a space. And the city is able to roll out quick interventions like this and demonstrate change in a very short amount of time. It's also because it's cheaper, right? It can cost thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars or euros or versus hundreds or even millions to transform a space, especially when we want to transform large space like this ones. Using paint and interim materials can help transform bigger spaces at a lower cost. It also reduces the pressure, right? Because sometimes there's a big pressure on implementing something, especially when we do capital construction. So what we say often is pilot first and then perfect later. It also an opportunity to test new ideas when it hasn't been done before in that context. We hear a lot, this won't work here. We're not Paris, we're not Amsterdam, we're not blank. So it's a way to try something ambitious like this transformation that we saw before the Skye was showing. First by piloting it and then perfectioning it and then do a capital transformation. It's also a way to show what's possible, to the technical teams of a city, to people living in a space, and really help people imagine spaces by seeing them, like this project we saw before in Milan. It's also a way to prove that it works. We hear a lot that things don't work, so we can pilot them and really demonstrate that the transformation can work before permanently transforming. It's also a way to refine the designs and really learn from those transformations to then long-term inform policies. A pilot can allow to test and refine the design, but also change not just practices, but also manuals and standards. And we have examples of places that use this transformation to then update their manuals. It can also change the conversation from streets that are seen as spaces from cars to streets for people, using data and imagery to really show what this can be, but also trying to shift the way we measure success and looking at other ways of evaluating projects. It's also a great way to bring people into the conversation. It's a way to ask them what they think, what they want, because they are the experts. And to get people involved so they are part of the transformation and can also become the stewards of the process, the projects. It's also a great way to use data to show what people want. Ask them how they feel, how they experience the space, and then communicate that, evaluating the impact and share the results to show how projects are working. And also very, very important, documenting the projects. We use a lot of before and afters because they can be so powerful. First they say it will never work, but then they forget how it was before. So it's a way to tell the story, especially when we pair this powerful imagery with data. But the ultimate goal, as I was mentioning before, is that temporary changes can unlock permanent transformation. So we use them as a way to move towards long-term impact. So really going toward a transformation that then can be permanent. But to change the streets, we really need you, all of you, to be part of it. Because the most essential, the non-replaceable ingredients of this recipe is people. And my encouragement to you all is to start where you are, use what you have, and do it together. Because streets belong to everyone, and so does the right to improve them. And you don't really need to be an engineer to redesign a street. If you live here, if you live in a place, you're already an expert because you experiences the space on a daily basis. And so I really believe at GDCI that together we can change the streets to change the world. So what I have here, I'm going to leave on the screen for a few seconds, these where we have the publications, but also a QR code. You can join our website. And you can download for free all of these publications and know more about what we do at GDCI.
This has been amazing, Fabrizio and Skye. Thank you very, very much. By the way, I have all of those books. They are fantastic, very easy to understand. You can even take screenshots of those and send them to elected officials because they have big fonts, big titles, lots of subtitles, very easy to understand for a non-engineer, a non-urban planner. Any city can get it. Can you make a call to action? We have people from small cities, we have people from large, we have people from Oakville, Ontario, we have people from Vancouver, we have from Halifax, from Flint, Michigan, from New Haven, from everywhere. What is your call to action to deal with this? Because all of this makes a lot of sense. But we now know what needs to be done, but we are still not. I mean, it's like on playing soccer, the World Cup. We have learned how to pass the ball, but the ball is not crossing the line. And if the ball doesn't cross the line, it's not a goal. How can we score goals? How can we move from talking to the tactical urbanism and to permanent?
Yeah, so that's my personal vision here. I think we hear a lot of the opposition, but when we think about or when we understand the opposition might be a very small, very vocal group of people. And my recommendation to us all is how do we actually create momentum? How do we rally together to show that change? How cities can leverage the silent majority in many cases to make those changes. And in terms of call to action, Gil, I mean, it's what I was saying before. You don't need to be an engineer to redesign a street. You just need to use it. If you live here, if you work in a place, if you use a space, you're already an expert. And I think we have to work together to really change. We won't be able to have consensus every time. Not everyone will be agreeing. There will be voices of dissent, and that's totally fine. I mean, that's actually great that this is possible. So people are okay, are fine to express their dissent and not agreeing, but that shouldn't be leading us to inaction and not really being able to change. So I think I think together as a community, we can do much more in order to change our streets and design together, a future or the future that we want for us and for future generations. So
Thank
yeah.
you, Fabrizio. And be honest with the citizens. Be honest. Like when you're going to do an example, a tactical urbanism, tell the people, let's try it out for a week, for a month, for 2 months. If it works, then we make it permanent. If it doesn't work, okay, we go back to how it was. And if it doesn't work, and a few times it does not work, so say, okay, we thought it was going to be great, it was not. Maybe 9 out of 10 it does work, but maybe 1 out of 10 it does. Okay, go back so that people know that you are being honest. Thank you very, very much, Fabrizio. I want to thank you and Skye. Thank you. What a great presentation. I love how you explained that we have forgotten that streets are for everybody, including children, and they are not very friendly to children, even though children need to be active. Over 80% of them are not getting the recommended levels of physical activity. And how you also mentioned your call to action is to start now. You can start small in a street corner, in a sidewalk, in a park, and do a test. You can invite the citizens to participate. And also how you clarify, you don't need to be an engineer to design a street. You just gotta be people. If you have streets and people, you can make them better. And through them, transform how people behave, how people live, so that everyone will be able to live healthier and happier. So we gotta do things radically different than most of what we have been doing. But the good news is that it's doable. And you showed lots of examples, and I hope that everybody that is watching, please send this video to decision makers in your city, elected officials, city staff, the media, advocates, share it in the universities, in the high schools, because everybody can learn from the many examples that Skye and Fabrizio have provided. Thank you very much.